We did it. We are selling ammo. NazoAmmo.com. We teamed up. Keystone Munitions, quality, premium product. We're selling it online. What do? You go to NazoAmmo.com. First thing that pops up, what's this? It's an email list. What's the email list do? It's going to give you access to promo codes. It's going to give you access to events, T-shirts, apparel, everything we're doing. Get on that email list. You want 45? 45's not on the website, but then it's coming in. You're ahead of the curve. You're ahead of the guy who's just finding out about it. You're a part of the family. Very fast and furious how we do everything around here. Nazo Ammo. We are moving Keystone Munitions. Premium products. We're doing it. You want to pick up? You don't want to have it sent? You're Carl. You live down the road? Pick up Nazo at the promo code at the end. Now you're picking up ammo here. We're doing it, man. We are doing it. Nazo Ammo. www.nazoammo.com. Small town, big ammo. Finishers MMA, finishersmma.com, @finishers. That's how you find them on social media. These guys have a show with us every Monday called Now We Go. You can check it out. Zach, JM, Thor, Grace, there's too many to name that come out of that school, and they are killers in the game. They are the biggest MMA jiu-jitsu school in the area, and they are owning the East Coast. You can contact them at 610-438-0746. Ask for Andrew. They are at 3761 Nicholas Street in Easton, PA. They have 2 locations as of now, Bethlehem and Allentown. They are growing into 3, 4, 5, 6. I would say they are taking over, but they already have. Check them out on all of their social media. They are awesome to follow. And if you're looking to get in shape, you're looking to choke people, you're looking to do anything at all to better your life, finishersmma.com. AllValleyRooter.net. That's not how you pronounce it all the time. I just say it that way. All Valley Rooter, Jared LaBarba. He is my plumber. He's the show's plumber. I'm getting him plumbing business all over, and I love that he is getting what he wants. He has 24-hour emergency service. He is certified, insured, and professional. You can follow him at All Valley Rooter. He's on social media, and you can find his information at allvalleyrooter.net. Jared came down over the weekend and he fixed a problem down here. He's super professional. I love him as a person. I love his business. He grew it and he's doing his own thing. It's allvalleyrooter.net. It's 24-hour professional plumbing services. He can help you out with everything you need. It's 610-762-1656. He's certified, insured, and professional. Do not be afraid to contact him for any of your plumbing needs. Support Jared. Jared supports us. Rips Auto Detail. This guy is the best, hands down, in the area. I've interviewed him. I know his story. He's doing things that others aren't, and I love that he fucks with the show. I love getting the best of the best and having them support and be a part of this. That's what the sponsorship is for. I'm giving you the best people in their profession, and Rips is the best at auto detail. It's at Rips Auto Detail for Instagram. You follow that. He's showing you the different cars he does, and it's at 630 North Nelson Street in Allentown, PA. He offers paint correction, ceramic, SPS coatings, and more. This is appointment only, and it's ripsautodetail@gmail.com. You can call him at 484-553-1366. I tell you, follow him. If you don't know, you want to know more about what he does, follow him on Instagram. Follow Rips Auto Detail, and you can see all the things that Rip does. He's a big part of the show. We have a separate show we do called Road Dogs, and you can check out his past interviews and hear his whole story. I couldn't recommend this guy more for your auto, car, boat, plane. This guy literally has done everything, and he is the best in the area doing this. Rips Auto Detail. Leave it rolling, but I'm just going to do just a Never Again Radio. I don't know what episode we're on. And then we just fucking get into it. Okay. Welcome to Never Again Radio, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Do you want me to adjust that so you don't keep looking at yourself?
No, I like it.
Does that work?
Yeah.
I don't know. Some guests don't like, and I forget sometimes that it's up there. For anyone who can't see this or listening to it, there's a monitor on the wall, and if I leave it facing the guests, it gets weird where you start fucking watching yourself talk. Even sometimes I'll do it because I'll like look up there for a time reference.
Yeah.
And then it gets weird. How the fuck did you get into social media? I swear a lot. But how did you get into doing social media? How did you get into running social media accounts? I like the style of how you do things. You're very good at what you do, but like, how does one start even being like, hey, I think I can make a living out of this?
Well, the living part is another. It's like slightly different than just doing it. So, working at places where there was social media and I wasn't doing it, and then having to see it and see it be bad is what got me into it. And that wasn't like...
It's the truth, though.
Yeah.
I've worked at food places. If you work at and somebody takes a bad picture, and then you're like, kind of like, oh man, like that, you like, because if I learned how to take pictures from taking a million fucking pictures. Mm-hmm. So if you would roll back into the beginning of my Instagram, it's totally different than the way it is now. But I learned how to take a good picture of a hamburger from taking pictures of hamburgers. And if somebody takes a shitty picture of food and they're like, hey, come buy this. And then you look at it and you're like, ah.
Yeah, so and that wasn't exclusive to me most of the time in the places I worked. Like there was usually a couple other people that like were like rolling their eyes at some of the stuff that was happening. And then I've always been in like managerial positions usually. So when you're in a position where you're sort of like a little higher up, you start to get into like, oh, I can do some of the posts too, or you give advice that's followed actually. And eventually, like at Two Rivers, at the time when I worked there, there was like 3 or 4 of us that were all posting to social media there. And that can be a big problem because there's like too many voices happening, and like a clear voice or whatever for your business is important.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have, especially with doing stuff like that. Like I solely control how this looks, and if there was other people involved, and even just from doing so many different projects with so many different people, you can't have too many people. Even if you have the same vision, how you're making somebody view social media is almost like you want them to see through your eyes.
Yeah.
So like if you have 3 different people, regardless of what you agree on, it's 3 different ways of looking at it. And then that becomes confusing for a follower or just to even work with a group on it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, even if the posts are not bad, even if all of them were good, if all of them are too different, it's just very chaotic. So when I was working there, I eventually was like, I feel like I should be the one that's like in control of the final posting of whatever. And if somebody else wants to post something, that they have to go through me first, just so that it can like have a feel. And that's really how I kind of got into it.
Yeah.
That I was kind of like, I'm kind of a perfectionist and a workaholic, and so for me, I just wanted it to be perfect, like as perfect as it could be. I mean, and that's it. And then I was doing it. So I was the bar manager there, and so I had a lot of actual free time. I didn't need to be there as much as I was, so I was just there all the time. So in that time, I was like taking pictures or thinking of ideas and sometimes just witnessing what's going on and being able to take pictures. So have you always ever like, did you always think that way with like kind of like with like social media? Like I don't, it is a job, but like when you were just describing like how you start looking at things is it's almost like content, and then you're looking at kind of like a production behind it. So like in my head, I have always pictured like just the way things are, like you kind of like, so like when you start doing it a lot, even when I go on hikes in the morning, it's like you start trying to capture how something looks. Yeah. Like, have you always thought that way before you were doing social media, where you were always like, kind of like, oh, that would be cool. Like, so you're into like art and different things, and you're just a super creative person where your brain is constantly going and it's just constantly creating. Yeah. That's exactly it. So when I was younger, I was really, really into art. Like from like age of 6, I was just always drawing. As I got older, I knew a lot of people who were into photography, but like they were like at the time it was like you don't have it on your phone.
No.
So
Can't get things developed.
yeah, so like if you were into it then you were like really into it because you had to like get a camera and like be like really into it. So for me as an artist, I was into the idea of photography, but I wasn't so into it that I was like, I'm going to go buy like an expensive camera. But I would even just go get the cameras, the disposable cameras, and just walk around town or wherever I lived, like lie down on the ground and look up at a fire hydrant in a certain way or whatever, and just be like, this looks cool because of the angle that I'm looking at it. And that's really, even though it's a literal angle, like the way in which you look at the world, yeah, I mean, if it's unique or you want everything to be beautiful, you can find it, you know?
Yeah, because I feel like back in the day, even for me, it was like I didn't realize that like I enjoyed storytelling through like media and like art and stuff like that. So it was like if you roll back to how it isn't now, like it was very hard to like tell a story or get a point across with a camera. Unless you were like what you said, you're doing it professionally, you have a camera. But even then, I mean, the disposable stuff, it's like, you know, you get it back and you're like, cool, this entire reel just looks like shit. Like it was weird. It's weird the way how adapt everybody is and how different things used to be back in the day.
Yeah. You know, obviously at that time, maybe that was a precursor to how I am now and how it relates to social media. But at the time, obviously, I wish I had, but nobody was predicting that this was going to be what it was like, you know?
No.
Nobody was thinking, oh, there's going to be like an amazing phone in your camera one day and all these apps where you can share stuff with people. Yeah, no, but that's the way I am. And I often think about it, like, I'm really hard on myself. So when I take pictures of stuff, you could look up, I could show you every picture I've ever taken for a social media account and I'll tell you everything that's wrong with it.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like how I am with cooking.
Yeah. So, but like with product shots, for example, I think of it as like more of like a feng shui sort of thing, which like basically you walk into a room, it's like, do some of the objects feel out of place to you? Is something bothering me about this? Like, would this make more sense here? Or does it feel better there? Same thing like with a product shot. So you got this square in front of you and you're like, well, I'm going to take a picture of this, but what would be good as the background? And then when you start to add stuff, maybe you're like looking at it and you're like, this bothers me. This bothers me. And you continually try to create, you know?
And as you point that out, it's weird because you don't realize sometimes that you have control of the stuff in front of you. So a lot of times when people take a picture, they're like, okay, well, I can't move anything. And then when I started working with my friends who do media, it's like, hey, man, like, why don't you pay attention to the background? And I'm like, oh, I can choose the background. And that's like, all right, well, maybe you should do something different with the lighting. And then when you start learning, like, how to move stuff around, like, you don't realize that you have complete control over like most of how that's going to look. But I think sometimes how I used to be is like, I would be afraid to get the shot. And it's like when I used to follow a lot of people, like way back in the day with like the camcorders, and I would go tape my friends skateboarding. Yeah. Like my friend would always be like, "Don't be afraid to like get the shot, like get in there, break through, like what you know, like oh I'm back here." Be like, "No, put the fucking camera in the wheels and get the goddamn like that's the shot you see in the skate video." And then I would walk around and film it all, and then I get back and I'd be like, "Why does this look like I just stood 2 blocks away?" And my friend was skating, and then it was like this thing where you have to like break a comfort zone in order for things to look correct.
That's true. That's really weird. I think about that sometimes because I often think like maybe that's what separates an ordinary person from someone who's like doing something like that is that discomfort
yeah.
And not wanting to like look weird or whatever. But as in any field or whatever you're going to do, your desire to want to do that thing has to be so great that it pushes you through that. And that's really all it is. So you're driven by this like passion and inspiration that's inside of you for some reason in that regard. Like there's a post that I did for Mindleaf when I first started because they have peanut butter CBD stuff and peanut butter and jelly and all this. And I guess from working in restaurants, I guess my mind was like thinking in that way. But I went to the store and bought like, bread and all this stuff. And I wanted Crayola Factory to be the background. So like the only place to do it across the circle was on top of a garbage can. Although with the shot, you wouldn't have known because it's just like the top. So I built a sandwich on it. There's like all these people walking by watching this. Going like, what is happening right now? Like, what is this guy doing? But you have to like be like, I don't care.
You have to shut it out or not give a shit.
Yeah, and just like, but it's like the idea that you have is so good. You have to remember it's so good, the idea that I have, that none of that other stuff matters. I don't always feel that way. Some days I just want to disappear and not have anyone look at me. But yeah, that's an interesting concept, though, the idea of like the discomfort.
Yeah, because I mean, and if you want, because sometimes like it gets like today, there was a crow across the street eating garbage, and I love like showing how disgusting things are on this block. It's funny to me. So like, I was like, all right, like. And I pictured it in my head. I'm like, you like in seconds. Like I was like, you could go over there. Like it was so bizarre that this giant crow was just in the middle of the street eating old Chinese food that got ran over.
Yeah.
And because I was like talking to the girl upstairs, and she's like, "What the fuck?" And in my head, I pictured it all, and I was like, okay, you could do a story, and then it's all in seconds. And I'm like, you could do a story, and I'm like, you could walk across the street. I'm like, do it as like a good morning, and then as you get closer, the bird's gonna fly away. You can tape it, and then I was like, then you can turn it into adding music, and you can add counting crows because it's gonna go with the crow. This is all like.
Yeah.
And I for a minute I was like, no, because I didn't want to do that because it's like, is a car coming? Is someone going to say, is this not going to be funny? Is this not going to land? And I was like, what are you doing? And I had to pull myself back in the direction and did it. And it was a home run. It's exactly what I wanted. The kid I tagged it in was dying laughing because I tag him in every one of those posts like that. But like, there's a very like moment of discomfort that if you, and it's happened to me all as a child wanting to be creative. It's happened to me like, just trying to say something in school, and I've always been a shy person, and bartending is the thing that pulled me out of that. And like I was a bartender, and that made me interact with people, but there's still this very small part of me that like it's hard to push past that. And when you do push past that, that's when you start getting like a really good picture, or you really start getting even if your vision sucks and you can't do the picture and everything, you're still doing past that discomfort. And I think that there's just a lot there that kind of nobody really ever discusses, but like it's this weird left gray area of like, can I create? And then if you're super insecure and you're like, like what you said, that like I had Monday, I didn't want to fucking deal with anybody. I sat down here and like I had my shutdown days, and it's like, it's what happens when you cross that barrier too many times. I feel like that's where I start doing too much then, because then I play in that area, and then you start looking in like, that's when you start burning out and like whatnot. But it's like to push yourself, it's not, and like what you said, it's all passion. Like as stupid as that whole thing with me and the bird, but like I'm so passionate because I know what it feels like to create a moment. And when you find out what it feels like to create a moment and it looks good, you start slowly getting addicted to like, okay, well, cool, let's do it again. Then now you're just driven. You're driven, and now you're just doing shit. And it's just, I don't know. It's my favorite thing about social media, as much as like, and we'll get into like, it turns into a job and the hours you put into it and the algorithms and the grinding. But like in its basic form, like I love social media for like posting and showing, being able to tell a story, but it's not easy to do.
Yeah. So one of the other things we were just talking about, when you mentioned the lighting thing, something I thought about, there was a post that I did that I think about when I think about lighting. I woke up, it was actually, so I took the picture, you wouldn't know if you looked at it, but I took the picture in my apartment. When I woke up that morning, I have a lot of windows where the sun comes in. I got up and I walked towards like my living room, and the light was coming in through the window at this angle across my bookcase, and it was just something magical about it, right? I'm like, oh, it just looks so nice. and I was like, I should put like product there because something is happening with the light, and it's just great. So when I did it, and I did it all, and I had it all set up, and I was taking pictures, and I took like probably like 50 pictures, and I kept looking at them. It just wasn't right.
That sucks too.
Well, and the bad thing about the sun is that it's moving.
Yeah.
So the longer you take, the more it changes. Like I had to like change the position of my blinds and like try to get it.
Now it's a project.
Yeah, and I realized that all the lighting was perfect except for the fact that I was so close to the wall, which was white, that the amount of reflective light coming off of the wall was messing up my picture. So I was like, I had to like tape up what I think the fastest thing I could find that was dark enough against the wall so that, and I was like, oh my God, it looks like, and yeah, like that, like normal people don't want to do that.
No.
You know, so like, and it's not like I'm saying like, oh, I'm better than a person. It's just, I truly am like,
Obsessed.
for whatever reason, just driven for some reason. Now, the other thing you could say is like, well, they make editing apps that you could just, but I always like to like, since we're supposed to be talking about social media, we're kind of like, make sure we stay like
Wherever you want to go, man.
one thing people talk about a lot is like organic with social media. So like people always tell me like, oh, do you know there's apps that like you can schedule a post to post at a certain time and blah, blah, blah. This is all like, it's not, those apps aren't actually meant as much to like make the social media itself good. It's meant to make your life better for you. So it's not as like, you're not consumed completely and you can make a real schedule with your life. But for me, it's like, I've noticed, I don't want to get like all like hokey dokey with like vibes and the universe and feelings and stuff, but there's just something about like a moment where you can like that, like when I saw the light that day, it's just like, sometimes if you just wait, and even it might be like, yeah, you took the picture before and you're posting it today, but like, what are you writing that day? Like there's a vibe in the world each day and during the moment. Maybe that's particular to where you are exactly, or maybe it's like the United States or whatever, but like I feel it. And I'm like, I feel like my posts when I'm like in a moment are always better for some, it's like an unknown reason.
No, I mean, I would agree with that. I had an intern over the summer, and we started looking into that because she was like, how much do you want to post a day? And she's like, you wouldn't be able to get anything done because you're scheduled, like, you know, because I was like, look, I want to be posting. She was like, look, these are your peak times. And I was like, cool, I want to post on those. And then she was like, all right, we should look into getting a thing. Now, everything we looked into, you had to pay. And I was like, that's not worth the money. But then we started messing around with the free stuff or like free trials. And it definitely made my life a lot easier. But what it did do was it disconnected me from people emotionally connecting with my social media. So like I still had to post in between that. So like I was like, because I just let it handle all my posts. And then I was like, well, this isn't really me. These are just kind of like I'm running ads. And then I'm like, I build this business around myself. So like I have to be involved in it. This doesn't work any other way without me, because eventually people will be like, I used to do stories a lot, and to the point where I had to stop because I was just living my life through the stories. But like people,
Instagram stories.
yeah. Okay. So like people enjoyed that and were like, oh yeah, you don't come on that much anymore. And I'm like, well, I was on it 24/7. Like I don't want to dictate my entire life. So there's this weird boundary of like how far you want to go into stuff. But then at the same time, it's like, I started noticing those posts would do all right. But then when I had me and I was like writing something that was like meant and in a moment, it popped harder. It didn't matter the time, you know, it didn't, because there's some times where I'll just randomly throw shit out because it's just something that's going on, and it'll go because it's a real moment. It's not an ad where I'm like, hey guys, check out my new shirt. Like, it's like, hey, this is what I'm going through right now. And then I also noticed is like that will go out further than just posting an ad. So yeah, you could pay a company to, and you put all this stuff out and it makes your life easier. But at the same aspect, I feel like you're not connecting with your audience.
Yeah. And then that's like, I mean, okay, so like there are like some very specific social media things where like you can look up where they say like now, like very recently, they've been more saying, okay, if you want to post to do good, you should interact for 10 minutes beforehand and 10 minutes afterhand
yeah,
and all this
yeah.
stuff. So if that's true, and if it's true for long enough for it to matter, because these things change a lot, then that would be a case where having a post just go up wouldn't make sense. But yeah, that's like organic though. What you're saying is like you're genuinely there as a presence. It's not like fake and pre-programmed. And people like you or the owner of a business. They like to see that, you know?
Yeah.
They want to know the face behind it. And the interactions, that's more like what I consider organic. The interactions need to be genuine, you know, which is like why they say, okay, it's good to comment on other people's posts, especially like ones that make sense. Like you're not just going out there posting on like meme accounts and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not good to just like leave an emoji, which like I'm sure we're all guilty of even if we know it's wrong. But to just like take like a little bit more effort and go
3 words.
a few words that are like genuinely think about it. Like, I'm a real person reading a real thing. How would I really respond? I mean, just do it, you know, it's just like, you know, but yeah, the other thing, you were talking about, I wanted to say something. What were you just talking about?
The posting times.
Oh, no. Okay, so we've actually touched on this a couple times now, and it's something that's actually very important when it comes to social media. Is that like, okay, so we're talking about like I want to do social media for companies, which I'm doing a little now. Really, yeah. One of the main things to me is like an owner doesn't have enough time. To be like commenting and liking and posting, and like it's not just about like, can you take a good picture and post it, and will that get likes, and is the like thing good? It's like you need to be there. It's like I don't even know if this makes sense, but I into myself I call it the Shepard Fairey effect. That's the dude who did the art. I think he did the art for Obama's.
For Obey.
The Obey guy.
Yeah.
And I watched a documentary on him, and it's like, it's not really him, but he had this idea of like, even though he's an underground artist, what if I just posted, like he would go and take an art piece that he did, and he would put like hundreds of it over and over and over and over on a wall somewhere, and he would just keep posting and posting and posting. And it's just one of those things like where like if you walk around your life and you're like, you see Nike, just do it. It's just there in your face. And one of the things about being on like social media is like, even if it's just like, so-and-so liked your post, so-and-so, you know, commented, so-and-so posted a video, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. It's none of that has to do with the actual content and what you're doing and whether you're selling a good product or anything. You're just there, which is good. And generally, like as an owner of a business, you don't have time to be on social media constantly, being there. But
it's tough to balance. I try, and this is the most I've ever been doing it, and my screen times are through the roof. And like I'm just like,
yeah.
But I've accepted that this is what I need to do, and I know what works, and especially with bringing food in, that kind of changed a lot of my social media. And then like, you know, I had to bring something else in because I just can't. I look at it from the viewer where I'm like, all right, cool. He's just posting a podcast guest every day and a t-shirt every other day. And then like, there's really nothing of substance there. So then it's like, all right, well, if I have these other things that I'm passionate about and I'm going to make money off of them, and like, I want to do all this stuff, like you need to start showing other aspects of like what this is. So then I connected to the main thing, which is never again. And then I just kind of umbrella it down. And it's like, you know, by the end of the fucking week, perfect example, all week, I just crushed it as much as I could. Like, here's this, I'm doing a pop-up, here's this video, audio, reels. I'm firing off all cylinders. And then by Friday, you know, I'm taking pictures during the event. People are stopping by, yo, make sure you tag me in that, so like it keeps going. Friday night, Saturday hits, and by Sunday, my ad thing on the stories is done. Like, I'm just like, dude, I can't I can't keep up. And I will eventually, because when I had the intern and there was like a small team down here, it was so much easier to do this. So much easier. Because now then she's kind of making these ad things. She's like, what do you think about this? I'm like, change this and that. Let's add this music. We're creating together. We have my vision. And then she's helping me put it up. And she's like, cool. Now the only thing you're responsible for tonight is make sure that you post at 9:00. And I'm like, that way of working is super healthy. What I'm doing now, I don't have the time to do it. Within the next 2 years, I'll pay you to do it. Like I can't do it. It's too much time spent doing that in order to get your point across, which is like, you work with somebody like yourself who knows what you're doing. You can easily hand the ball off and still work together and get the point across. Now, like what you do at Mindleaf is awesome. Like I really like how you handle that. You give a shit about the pictures. You give a shit about what you're doing. Time is put into each post. Now, if you work with somebody like that, and you sit down and you have a meeting and be like, look, this is how I want this to look. This is how I want this feel. I need you to take over. But then you also have people who aren't creative and they're just running a business and they need a creative person to take over. And then that's when you have to brand their business. But then some people don't even know what the fuck branding is. And they're just like, and then that in itself is a very difficult job. I mean, it's way more than like, hey, dude, can you run my social media? Like, it's like, well, how deep do you want to go with this?
Exactly. Yeah. I think about it all the time because I have to come up with like pricing as to like, it's easy to like say, hey, do you want to buy a hamburger from me and like figure out how much you should charge for it? But with something like social media, it's like one of those intangible things. Yeah, it's hard for me. I mean, I'm starting out, so like I'm really lowballing myself, obviously, just for
that's what happens. It's better than charging way too much, and then people are like, that dude ripped me off.
I mean, although I know that I have the talent and the desire and the drive and the blah, 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 I do have experience. I know that it's not enough. There's not enough for me to show at this point to like be like charging an exorbitant amount. But it's hard because it is an intangible thing. I mean, sometimes you might never know as an owner if it's even helping your business. But with the owner thing, like, and me as a person who wants to do social media for a business, there's like a sort of Goldilocks zone or like a cherry zone for me, because obviously I can't just do that for anyone. If they don't appreciate it at all and aren't going to care, then it's like there's that low end where it's like, okay, it's not worth getting involved. And then there's that like kind of higher end where it's like, well, if they know too much and want to basically like dictate everything that I'm going to do,
it's just going to be a nightmare.
So there has to be like a Goldilocks zone for like someone who really actually needs what I have to offer and is like knows enough to appreciate it, but at least knows that whether they know a lot or not, knows they don't want to do it. You know what I mean? And are willing to like hand it off to someone else. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. So, I mean, you're talking about like keeping track of like doing like I'm doing videos and pop-ups and all this stuff. One of the things that I will like is say somebody was going to hire me to do their social media. Well, like if I looked at their Instagram, for example, I mean, one of the first things you do is just pull up their Instagram as like a person from the outside looking in, and you look at their grid of like their photos, and then you just go, well, how does this make me feel? Like, what's going on? And you kind of like scroll up and down a little, and you go, because some places like I've seen a lot of restaurants where it looks like they're a club. They just post like what looks like a flyer for a like DJ event.
Yeah.
But they're a restaurant.
Or like a picture of the menu and it's not the digital file.
Yeah. So to me, that's a little odd because I'm like, well, what are you going for? But it like kind of shows, I guess, whoever is in charge of their social media, that's what they find important. But it's like, well, I've seen restaurants that have like, really, really great food. But a restaurant has a lot of stuff. It has like good employees, good food, good drinks, good, so one thing I do when I look at a grid and if I'm making a grid for myself, like for example, like at a restaurant, I would say, okay, well, what are the things that we have? If you have a lot of food, obviously a restaurant, you have a lot of food, you could start to break it down by section: desserts, appetizers, burgers, like real entrees. And You never want to. You're not going to like go onto your. If you look at someone's grid for a restaurant, it would hopefully not be like, steak, 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 fish, steak. Like obviously, right?
Yeah.
But I see that kind of stuff. So my first thought would be like, okay, let's lay out the kind of stuff you want people to see that you have, and then disperse it evenly amongst your feed. Like, we'll post an employee, we'll post a drink, we'll post a burger, we'll post an event's going to happen. We'll post, you know what I mean? And like space it out but yeah, I see that like people get a little overwhelmed with either going all over the place or just focusing on like one thing.
Yeah.
Another thing I noticed recently in feeds, so this is like free advice, I guess. I don't know if you've noticed this or you've come across this yourself with reels. When you make a reel, there's this thing where it's like it goes to people's timeline like as if you made a regular post, so they see it when they're scrolling through their newsfeed. But it also shows up on your profile grid. So like if you go to their if you go to their Instagram, it looks like it was a post there. So there's this little thing where you go in and you go remove from profile grid, because you don't want the reel, most likely, you don't want the reel to be a post. So that's a thing I see a lot, where people make a reel and then leave it on their profile grid, and it kind of messes up the whole flow of the profile grid, because to me a profile grid is like should be a little more artsy. I don't mean that like in an extreme way, just it should have a vibe and a flow. And I think people mess it up a lot by leaving their reel in the grid.
I didn't know you could take the reel off the grid.
Yeah. It's just right on it. So once it's posted, you go back into it, into the ... drop down, and then go remove from profile grid.
Yeah. And I didn't start paying it. It's funny that you brought that up, because the other day is the first time that I looked at a grid, and I was like, oh, I'm like, there's something with that grid. And I'm like, and then I started thinking outside the box, where I'm like, yo, you could like lay this grid out where if like, say if you were doing food, so you could post like how you were doing dinner, dessert, dinner. So if you looked at that grid, essentially you could do it correctly where everything in the middle of the grid is your dessert, everything over here is this, and everything over there. And then I had this moment where I was like, fuck, I was like, man, there's a total hustle in the grid itself, because like you could do, there's creating inside the grid. So then when you go there, it's how people are looking at it. And the fact that you brought that up is weird, just because like 2 days ago, I was like, oh, I'm like, you could totally change how this looks on the grid. And then I started being like, all right, well then you would need to start paying attention to what you're posting, which essentially would give you better social media anyways.
Okay, so I will say that one of the problems with that is, well, one, it's like, it's a lot.
Oh yeah, that would be, it would be a lot of control.
The other thing is that because it's like three images, you then have to like post in order to get it all to line up again, unless you want it to be off for a couple days or whatever. But I've seen people do like 3 photos in a row, where basically either they've used an app that does it for you, or you could just go right into Photoshop. You can take a picture, and you could make it 3 blocks that would be the size of the Instagram thing, and then post them one after the other.
And then you see the picture in the grid.
Then you see the picture in the grid. To me, okay, so it is cool, but there's 2 things that might be wrong with it. I think it would be better for an influencer to do something like that than a business themselves. Because one, there's something a little corny about it. Like, it's just like, okay.
I find it annoying as a follower, where like who does it a lot? The one band I like, I can't think of their fucking name, but they did something where they put the album cover, and then I'm like, all right, well, for the entire fucking day, I saw a corner on a thing, and then I'm just like, all right, I don't fucking care. Great, it's a big picture, and then you're just annoyed and move on.
Yeah, that's
Diane Ward does that a lot.
So the same thing if you're talking about like...
How dare you, Diane?
I've never heard of them.
How dare you?
But same thing if you were going to do like, I want all the left, I want all the middle, I want all the right. That means that every time you post one, it's going to be in the wrong spot, so you have to post 2 more.
Yeah.
And the real problem with that, yes, is that you can annoy people. So there is a zone where you don't want to post too much because it could be annoying, and obviously you don't want to post too little because then you're no one sees you.
And I feel like just even talking about this as a business owner who would have to do this, there's no way that that's what I would pay someone to be doing. Be like, hey, we got this thing coming up. Be like, all right, why don't we do something on the grid? And then that person is paid because they're making time to fucking do that project, where like I would never be like, it would be the whole day would be revolved around like, okay, let's post this, let's post that. And like, I'm bad enough with fucking math and figuring shit out, let alone being like, okay, we got to post this backwards. And like, it would turn into a project, but that's what somebody would pay you to do.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a part of me that hates talking about all this, because there's people that know so much more than me about it, or at least know way more about one thing about it with me than I do. But it's like, could those people do it for a business though? So like, there's people who might go, and this is with everything in life, who might go, oh, I could do that. Like, they look at a picture, they're like, oh, I could do that. Well, yeah, maybe you could take forth the concerted effort and energy to do one picture that was good. But do you have what it takes to every day, basically, or at least like, all the time, to have that consistent energy of being like, I'm going to make a good post, and my next post is going to be a good post, and my next post is going to be a good post, and I'm going to be doing it all the time. Because like most people, like, yeah, I'm sure like most of the people could like make a good post, or like make a good take a good picture. It's more like, it's like a guy getting up and taking a half-court shot and making it. But it's like, you see like someone like Stephen Curry has a reel on YouTube of like 3 minutes of him making half-court shots in games. And like, there's a difference between like doing it once but anyway, it's one of the reasons there's a part of me that doesn't like to talk about it, because I know there's people out there that know so much, and this is all so simple to them. But again, there's people that really I've come across that know almost nothing about any of this, and when I show them little things, they're like, oh my God, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, and one, you don't give yourself enough credit. What you do with social media and how you handle the accounts that I follow is you do a really good job, and you know what you're doing. And I know it's new to you, and this is a new business, and you're learning it, and this is exactly how I was in the beginning. You're very similar to me, where you don't like giving yourself credit, but like, you're doing this. So let's just get that out of the way. You are doing this. You're making money. You know what I mean? Like, You're good. It's okay. You can take a compliment. I do the same fucking thing. Two, when I've also like had people approach me, and they're like, I want you to do what you do for my social media. And like, to me, I'm so into this. I look at it as like, okay, well, like, you have social media, like you definitely have done it as much as me. So like, and it goes back to what we were saying, like, where I have an obsession to tell the story. Like, I even had somebody do like the Batman thing, where it goes like in a circle and it like cuts through to the like it separates a time in the old 70 ones. So like, they'd go on a thing and they'd be like, yeah. And the guy who did all those graphics, I was like, yo, I need you to give me a spinning thing. So what I started doing was, when I would be like talking about one thing and then I would end it, I now would put in this 2-second thing of the tower going, and then I can reset. Because really cool. I had a problem, but like, that's the shit, is where I think people are that obsessed with how it looks. And then I realized no one does, unless they're like you who are doing this. But like, the people that I run into have no clue what I'm trying to do. Like, they see it and they're like, oh, that's cool. But they don't realize like what is behind it. And then I start realizing where they're like, well, can you do this for me? And I'm like, no, like, this is a full-time fucking job, and I'm still figuring this shit out. So it's like, for you to be like, you're afraid to talk about it. It's like, there's know-it-alls who think that they know what they're doing, and I'm sure that's the generation coming up that grew up with, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's shit where I don't understand in Snapchat. I don't fuck with Snapchat. I don't even fuck with Twitter. Like, you know what I mean? But there's like kids who grew up with that, so you're always gonna have that. But the knowledge that you have surpasses a lot of the shit that I even know, and I'm in it, swimming in it every fucking day. But I find out from a lot of people is. And it's funny, because I think that like everyone should know as much as me, because if they're doing it as much as me, but then I realize that not everybody's obsessed with it. Not everybody's trying to sell something. Not everybody's trying to tell a story. Not everybody's got to try and find an angle. And it's weird to have conversations with people about it, where it's not so much that it's probably similar to what you were saying, but it's like sometimes I don't even want to open the book because like I don't want to get into explaining to you what I'm obsessed with because this is a fucking 4-hour conversation.
Yeah.
Where to you it's just like, well, whatever, you post something. And then like if you don't understand that what's going behind it of like the storytelling and all that, it's very hard to even talk to anyone about it. Like I love like the whole reason we're doing this is because we had like a 2-hour conversation about this off air. And I was like, yo, we should totally just talk about this. But I love talking to people who are into it and understand it. I mean, you're past me as far as understanding like how to move stuff around. And that's a thing that I think a lot of people don't even realize too, is like, there's like things you got to do in order to move stuff and it's times. And it's just like, you know, you were even explaining to me how to get my numbers up. And I'm like, dude, like this is a fucking beast. But you watch YouTube videos, you read up on it, you research. Like you're not just like, hey man, I know what I'm doing and that's what you're buying. Like you're fucking researching it like a career.
Yeah. The thing that sucks about YouTube videos about stuff like this, or I guess anything, is that there's so many out there that are just not good.
No, like the clickbait shit.
Yeah. And it's like books. I always say this about books. Like people are always like, oh, like you know, there's people that are like, oh, you should read more. Reading is great. Reading is amazing, or whatever, which is true, if it's a good book.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how many books exist?
When's the last time you read an instruction manual?
But like,
I never read anything. It's hard for me.
It's impossible for all the books that exist right now to be good enough that are, like they're worth reading. Really,
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the information they're trying to convey to you is not worth having. It's just. It doesn't, just because it's in the book doesn't mean it's well written. It's like same thing with a YouTube video. They have the information and you want it, but they unfortunately sometimes like just like maybe the guy comes on, he's just annoying. You know?
Yeah.
You don't want to listen to it.
Or the audio's bad. And like the information's awesome, but then it sounds like they're talking in a tin fucking can. And it's just like, fuck, man.
I have a thing where I do this all the time with informational videos is I change the speed of the video on you because you can change the speed on YouTube. So
I didn't know that.
I just click on change speed and I watch it in like 1.75 times speed or 2 times, depending on how fast they talk. Some of the like East Coast people, you gotta like maybe 1.5 times, but like someone from the South, maybe 2 times speed. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. And one thing I was just thinking about when you were talking before was when you create something that's good and you put all this time into it, it's like sometimes people don't see because they don't know. It just seems effortless because you've kind of like just got rid of all the things that are wrong and you've left them only with this final product. Yeah. And so sometimes people can go, oh, it seems easy. But they don't realize that you actually like did a bunch of little tiny things to make it that way. Like when I'm doing like, I've just got into like video stuff, so I'm not like claiming to be an amazing videographer or a video editor, but I'll usually choose a song to edit the clips to. And so that song is already down there. And there's a feeling when you're listening to the song. So when you're watching the video clip and listening to the song, like you're like, oh, like the way the camera moved in that moment didn't mesh well enough with the song for this to be good enough for me to post. I don't like it, you know? And so it's just little things like that where once it's all there, it's like, oh yeah, it makes sense. It's like,
it's my favorite thing to do.
Along, you know,
it's my favorite thing to do is to match music that way. And it's my favorite thing about video editing. The fact, because I did do this way back in the day and I would choose music and I would use it as promos and I would clip out all this different stuff and I'd time the music correctly. And if you do that, it looks fucking awesome. Yeah. It's a lot of work. But when they started having access to music on Instagram, like it was a game changer. Cause like, it's funny how Instagram changed. Cause it was like, remember when it used to just be a picture and you could only upload it from your phone? Like you couldn't like do it off of a computer. Like it was just one, like you could upload pictures only. Then they were like, 15 seconds of video. And I was just like, what? And then like now they got IGTV, you can put a series on it, you can build off of it. Like it's really cool what you can do. But when they add music in, especially with like the reels, like I took a slow-mo and of the honey going into the batter. And I was like, all right. So I was like at the bar, but I went through 10 songs.
Yeah.
And then finally, earlier in the day, Beastie Boys' High Plane Drifter played, and it's got that real slow, like, doom, 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 doom. So I'm like, all right, it's slow-mo, so we need the tempo
That's
way
a
down.
sample too.
But it's like, I did dabbled in DJing a little bit, so I started understanding the timing and the beat, and like you can't just take two songs and shove them together. Like you can blend them. So I take a little bit of that, and then I started thinking, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm like, I can use High Plains Drifter. So then I find it on there, and then when I dropped it, it's like doom doom, and the honey's dipping in, and I was like, I don't care what that does as far as like numbers. The cool feeling where I'm like, it's good. It's good. I love doing that.
I did the same thing with the honey video that I posted. I just did. It was actually like candlelight. It was dark, but there was like I used candlelight to make like a sensual, and I like did the spoon. I actually took like so many videos because like honey, like
I'm surprised I got room on my phone for the amount of shit that I do for takes.
So the way that I like dipped it in and like had it drip, but I was like, there's something so sensual about this, and my first thought was Barry White.
Yes,
so I was like, I actually always used to say, because I was really into skateboarding as a teenager, if I ever had a skateboarding video, that I would play that particular Barry White song as my skateboarding montage clip. But yeah, it's just the way that it comes in, there's just something about it that I was like, it was like, I don't know if you know that song. It's like, I'm gonna love you just a little bit more.
I don't know.
It's like,
if I heard it, I probably would know.
Yeah. But yeah, the High Plains Drifter is a good one.
But the other thing, yeah, like
that's a real song though. They sampled it.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it is, but I was at a bar and it came on, and I was like, oh, Beastie Boys is playing in here?
Isn't it funny when that happens?
And then it wasn't the Beastie Boys, and like the person that was older than me that was there was like, this is so and so, and they like schooled me, but I was like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, what the fuck was I gonna say? Fuck, I lost my train of thought now. It was something with the music and whatnot.
Oh, the music. What we should talk about is
We're
how
so good.
We should talk about how like you can't use music as a business. We were talking about that earlier. You know how like if you are a business profile.
Oh yeah. Because a friend I had the business profile for a while, and I would kind of go back and forth because sometimes I'd be like, am I being like my algorithms down because they know I'm a business, and then you got to pay to go out further. And then my buddy was like, dude, go over to creator mode because then you can do something with that. And then it was like, just recently somebody asked me, and I was like, no, you can't be the business account because it doesn't allow you to use the music at all.
Yeah,
but
which sucks.
Yeah. I think I run it as, I don't even remember because I switch mine so much, but I think I'm on a creator account. I think that's what I have it as.
They allow you to use the music at 10,000 followers.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Well, that's a lot of stuff they changed too, where you get to 10,000, then you can do swipe up, you can monetize.
Oh, yeah.
YouTube changed a lot of that shit too. Now I remember what I was going to say before we go too far ahead. With the whole thing where you were like saying like all the different outtakes and you make it look so easy, back to the skate videos. Like I grew up watching skate videos, and the best part was the end where you saw the dude just being like, fuck, and he's like, it's 36 attempts, he's all beat to shit, and then you get to see him land it once, but he's been out there for 2 fucking days. And sometimes they show you where like he doesn't land it, and like he tried for like an hour, and they're like 2.5 hours, and he's so frustrated, and then like you don't get to see it because they just stopped doing it because he's like ready to break his fucking legs. But that always was. It was because you watch it, and especially if you get into like the Red Bull videos and like the Art of Flight and like some really cool snowboarding shit, and then when you watch it at the end, you're like, oh, this is all edited and added music, and like this is all like, it's the production. And then when you look at what it was like these dudes out there on a mountain for a whole fucking day just eating shit sandwiches till you get the perfect fucking shot. But they don't. It's the same thing as what we're talking about with getting the peanut butter and jelly shot, except for these guys got helicopters and there's, you know what I mean? It's on a whole nother level, but it's the same thing as these guys pushing themselves to the point of like the one was the Art of Flight, then they did a sequel and the guy almost fucking died because he was trying to make the he was trying to make a better, he was trying to upstage The Art of Flight, which is, in my opinion, the best snowboarding video I've ever watched. Cinematography, the soundtrack, home run. Should have left it alone. But he pushed himself because he's like, I want to do it better. And then it almost cost him his life in an avalanche. But it's like, those are the people that are pushing the fucking boundaries. There's a reason why they're the fucking best snowboarder. It's a reason why, it's not something that they were like, this is cool. And then they're just that. It's fucking... doing it since you were a child and becoming obsessed with it, never stopping on it and pushing it. But watching those videos and seeing what it actually takes to put them together, and the small production that I've been a part of, like go with my friends to watch music videos, and then it's 3 days of shooting for a fucking 4-minute video. There's a lot that goes into it besides what you see.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because I've watched a lot of skateboarding videos, to the point where like just listening to the sound of a skateboard going across the ground is like so comforting to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, those outtake videos, it's similar. It's like, it's the same thing though. It's like, I used to skateboard, and at a certain point I realized like, I'm never gonna be good at this. I don't have the drive to want to be good enough to get as hurt as I'm going to need to be good, because good people have to fall and maybe break their legs.
It's a very frustrating sport.
Yeah, I mean, some of those outtakes videos I've seen, like guys going down, like you're dropping off like what would like be like 2 flights of stairs or whatever, and like sometimes because they don't land it, they like break their board. Now they have to use a different board or whatever. So it's like, the drive that keeps you going is just like you want to do it that bad. So I guess in life you should probably find something that you're willing to.
It's hard though. I mean, it's hard. I mean, this whole thing and everything I do has been a constant struggle to get to here. And, I see you and listening to you, and that's why I told you, like, dude, you're doing this. Like, I remember in the beginning of this, like, I didn't know when I would make the transition to just doing this full time. And that jump, it's scary, man. Like, I've always worked in kitchens, even when I first started, I left the post office, and I always tell the story as much as I can. It's like, I washed dishes. Like when I first got to the studio, I washed dishes. I went because I was scared, and I was like, you don't know what you're doing, and you do need some extra income. And like, what are you going to do when it doesn't pan out and you're fucking broke? And it was like, all right, well, I'm only going to do this part-time because I know I can't have a full-time job and do this because we're way past that. So it's like, all right, well, what can you do? And I went over to Widows, and I was like, hey, like I need a job. Like, what do you want to do? I want to wash dishes. Really? Yep. So I'm listening to music. I wash dishes.
Key,
And then like, I helped out when I could. I didn't really get into like how much experience I had in food because I didn't want to get on the line. I didn't want that anymore. And it's still hard for me to do that again. But like, I needed to do that. And like, I sucked it up. I'm working with a bunch of fucking younger kids, and they're like, who's this old dude washing dishes? And it's just like, I don't talk about what I do to a lot of people unless they bring it up. And like, when I'm not doing this shit, like I don't really want to talk about it. It's exhausting because it's my life. And sometimes I'd rather ask somebody what the fuck they're doing than fucking sit here. Oh, you do this. How do you do that? And then, but like I wash dishes, and I had to do that in order to do this. But once I started doing this, it's like I found my lane. But it's like so many people give up on the idea of doing what they want for a living. And I try and drill it into anybody's head, man. I'm living proof. Like I never stopped. I never stopped wanting to do it. All my friends thought I was crazy, and they rooted me on. And it's like, and it's like, now it's like I talk to them, and it's like, it's just, they don't even treat me like this is just what I do for a living. This was not easy to do. Like I picked the worst possible. I could have had a landscaping business. Like, you know what I mean? But like, if you want it bad enough, I'm like, I'll call my friends and be like, oh, I'm doing all this shit. And I'm like, this is so crazy. And they're like, no, it's not. You wanted it more than anyone else. So it's like, if you want to create it, if you want to do social media for a living, which you're really good at, just don't stop. Don't stop doing it. Don't fucking get in over your head, keep it cool, do what you're doing. But like, you do the shit that you're doing is cool, man. It's a good follow. You give so much, you give a shit so much, and it shows in it. And that's very hard to do, is to show people that you give a shit.
Yeah. I don't never really think about it that much.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it, So do you want to, I did have some things that I wanted to touch on. Do you want to
what do you want to go over?
Touch on some of this? So Okay, so this is just for like, again, like people who might not know a lot about social media and might be like looking to hire someone. Like, what are some of the things that you would talk about to someone like that, you know? And I always like to make the differentiation between like the difference between, because like I'm a social media manager. I'm not an influencer. So like, yeah, there's lots of people out there who know the difference between those two things. But I think maybe for a business owner to understand the difference between those two things is essential, because a social media influencer is someone who, you know, they are their own product, you know, and they have tons and tons of followers, and they basically are like, oh, this is cool, you should look at this, or this is cool, and maybe they're promoting businesses. They probably get a lot of free stuff because of it. Like, that's not what I'm doing, you know. I don't want to. I want to, like, a social media manager runs your social media account for you. It's not like some like guarantee of like, I'm going to get you 30,000 likes on your next post because I have 30,000 followers, you know? So that's always something I think is worth mentioning.
It is. And like, I think a lot of people get that confused as well, because it's not easy to get some, like if you took over somebody's social media account, like it's not going to, like what you said, they're like, oh, cool, I'm hiring this guy. I got 30,000, you know, I'm going to get this. It's like, no, like first I have to clean up the mess, and then we have to have a plan. And then it's like, what are we doing this year? How are we going to get to where we're going? And like, that's what you would hire for.
Yeah.
Not, hey, you know, this guy's going to get me, you know, guaranteed followers and stuff like that. And I think a lot of that is just bullshit and smoke and mirrors anyways, because like, you know, you can have somebody help you out to get a bunch of followers, but it's like, you know, another good topic to get into is like the interactive following as opposed to just a following. Like, you know what I mean? You can have 1 million followers and do a podcast and get 200 listens.
Well, yeah. So this is actually a really big thing. So I sometimes look at accounts that have thousands of likes on their photos, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll do the math between the amount of followers they have and the likes on their photos. And like a normal ratio is like 9%. So they have like, let's say they have like 3,400 likes on their photo, which is a lot. Like, you know, I've never worked anywhere that gets that many likes on their photos. So say they have 3,400 likes. I look at how many followers they have, do the math. That's like 6% of their followers like their photos. So that means that like all the people following them either never even saw it because they weren't on Instagram for long, like when it was there and it went down so far in their news feed that they never saw it, or they just scrolled right past it and didn't care. The other thing is that if you own a business, so like someone who is like just a person who wants a bunch of people to follow them and like them, I don't know what they're really gaining from that, but a business is a business because it wants to sell stuff and make money. So I always say, like, would you rather have a post that has 1 million likes and no one buys your product, or would you rather have 1 like and tons of people are buying your product?
Yeah.
So really, like, yeah, you have to like, you know, you can't be obsessed with likes and you can't be obsessed with follows and you can't be, you have to really, the bottom line is like, are people buying our product? That's really important. The problem can become, though, like with the whole intangible thing, is just like, are they buying it because of Instagram? Like, so somebody needs to be saying like, oh, I was on Instagram and I saw your stuff, or someone that works there needs to be questioning, oh, how did you hear about us? Or like, what brought you in? Or like, unless they just directly message you through that app and ask you about your product, there's no way to really know, you know? So, but for me, that's what I think about. I don't think about the social media in and of itself as being its own thing where like I want a bunch of people to follow us and like our stuff and the accounts are cool. Well, the whole point of it all is to sell product. So for me, like we're gonna do that the pop-up at Connections, right? Like my mind was thinking about stuff like that. Like, what can we do? Like, I guess as a social media manager, I don't really need to be thinking about stuff like that, but my mind is doing that because I'm like, in my heart, I'm like, well, we need to be selling stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
You could get, but it's a really interesting topic to get into, is because you can get lost in the idea of the presentation, and then nothing, like you pull the event off and then it's like, all right, well, what was the event for? And then people don't even realize, they're like, oh, well, was this like a Never Again Radio thing? Or like, is this like, what was this? And then, all right, well, what did we do? And then it's like, all right, well, did we make any money? And then it's like, all right, well, did we get content out of it? And a lot of times if you do all that shit wrong, you didn't get content, nobody knew what the event was for, and you lost money.
Yeah.
And like, if you don't pay attention to doing that, you can really go down a rabbit hole of just wasting a bunch of time. I mean, because that's what I was thinking about when we were there. It's like, all right, well, how are we going to decorate this? And what's the first thing that you want when somebody comes through the door? And how do you want this presented? And, you know, all right, well, we're going to do food. Okay, well, we're selling tickets. And then I remember saying the price of the ticket, and you were like, dude, that's way too low. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, that is extremely too low. And then you start doing the numbers, and I'm like, that's going to cover nothing.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, if you start, like, there's so much to it. There's so much to it.
Well, I mean, that event is like getting presented as sort of like a dinner, a night out with.
That's what I think it's turning into.
Yeah, so there's a band, there's dinner, there's food, there's drinks, and when you go to a restaurant, like if you went to a restaurant in Easton, 2 people sit down and have a normal. I mean, it's going to be at least $100, $120.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And that's normal, you know.
Yeah. I went out for wings last night, and it was $94.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, making money. I don't know if there's like a disconnect, and maybe that's why some people who own businesses are a little like weary about stuff like Instagram or social media, where it's like what? It's just like this is a whole little world where like kids are obsessed with like how they look and stuff. Like what's the thing? But for me, as like a social media manager, my heart is in like, is this going to somehow generate more sales for the company I work for?
That's huge, though.
It's the point of a business.
It is.
Stuff.
And like, you know, when I started doing the social media back in the day, it's like, it was like, all right, cool, let me figure out what I'm doing. And it's like, if you lose sight of like what the whole purpose is for, is like right now, like what I'm trying to do is build an interactive audience, because I saw how interactive audiences work with guests that come on here. I've had guests that come on here that have large followings and the numbers weren't good. And then I had a guest that come on here and they had a super interactive audience, and it's the highest numbers I had. It's the most, they all left comments. They're like, this is an awesome thing, you know? And then I was like, man, I was like, to have that kind of like connection with your following. I mean, if you do that, now you're selling merch. Now you do that. So it's like, when I started like really looking in, when I started doing food, that's when it started becoming interactive. Like people were relating to it more. And then because now I do a pop-up, so now they see that food, then they can go buy it. Now they're doing something besides that. And then like that started bringing my fans or listeners over to me, and like they'll come up and be like, yo, I love the podcast. And like now I'm like, oh shit, like there are people out there. People are listening. They are interacting. They are spending money. And like if you don't harness that correctly, you can lose out on a lot of money. You can lose out on building a career. You can lose out on building a business, and you can lose sight of like paying somebody to run your stuff that's not doing it correctly, and it's never going anywhere. Yeah,
actually, so that's an interesting thing that Facebook and Instagram do. I guess it's just because they have so much money. They could do whatever they want. They can add any feature they want to their app to make it as cool as they could possibly make it so people use it more. But I do notice that like if I was going to take over someone's Instagram account, for example, or help them with it, my first thing is like, I'm going to go, aside from just looking at it and then watch and looking at what's actually going on with like, how are people interacting with it and what is it and whatever, I go into the insights. So the insights are like amazing. Like you can't like be obsessed with insights and try to like do everything based on insights. But I've talked to people that don't look at their insights at all, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, the insights are really great because they get very specific. You know, like so you can go into the insights and you can say, well, let me look at our posts from the past 2 years, and then see the insights for those posts, and you can say like by likes, which ones got the most likes, and it orders it for them. But you could also look at other stuff, which I find more important, which is stuff like website clicks and profile visits, stuff like that. So what I do is I look at each one and I go, okay, this one has a lot of likes, but this one has more website clicks. This one has more saves. This one has more shares. This like which ones? But usually when you do that for a business, you immediately see a pattern, and it's like something that they're posting is always up there at the top. And when you see that, you kind of got to go, well, this is what your followers seem to like, and this is what they seem to want to see the most or like the most. So there should probably be more of this in some, you know what I mean, in some way. So it's just funny to me that people don't want to, either don't know about insights or don't want to look at them or don't think they're useful. It is another one of those things where you can't, it's just another piece of the, puzzle that you have to put into. You can't become obsessed with the insights, but there's a lot that you can learn from them as far as like audience interaction. Even with like breakdowns of like how many male to female followers you have, the time of day thing. I know people are always obsessed with the times that people are on. Some accounts that I look at though, it's like every single day of the week, everyone's on every day from like 8 to midnight. They're just like, okay, so everyone just is obsessed with Instagram. Like, but yeah, it is a good thing to post like right before people are about to go on, because they're most likely to see it right when they come on. But yeah, the insights is a good tool, I think, that is a little bit overlooked.
Is Instagram like the primarily what you like handling, or do you mess around with the other stuff, or like,
I like Instagram a lot. But again, that is always going to go back to the business itself. So like for me, I'm not a big fan of Facebook. So you can just set Instagram to post automatically to Facebook. So you post a post, it's already on Facebook. The one thing I did notice about Facebook is I feel like you can get away with posting like less good stuff more often. So whereas like your posts on Instagram kind of like have to have that feel that I was talking about with your grid. Like if you wanted to, you could maybe like go into Facebook more often and post stuff like just like your like less good stuff. The other thing about Facebook is I feel like it has like a slightly older like user base than Instagram.
It's completely changed.
Like more old people are on Facebook than Instagram.
Yeah, there was a time where people's parents started showing up because it was just for the younger, because it was MySpace. Then it went to Facebook, and I feel like it was just kind of like this hot new thing, and it was like just stuff that like younger kids had to communicate on, and then it turned into this tool where people were like families were connecting, and like it was weird to watch what it's turned into. And now I just think it's like a dumpster fire that older people are on, and it's not really like. I feel like I don't get anything out of my Facebook. I don't get monetary shit out of my face. I used to back in the day, but then with the algorithms and shit, and then now they want to pay, and I've tried paying, and I'm just like, I don't see it. What I do see is that I can creatively showcase the message that I want through Instagram, and I feel like that's the easiest platform for me to use. I can dump it over to other stuff, but like as far as Facebook itself, like I don't know where it's going to be in 5 years, but I don't even know.
I think it's in like a transition period right now. It's a little weird, the landscape of Facebook to me. The one good thing that
it seems confused.
The one good thing that you could say about it though is that generally older audiences have money to spend. So it could be again that thing where you're talking about. It's like, well, these people are really engaged and interested in blah blah blah, but am I selling anything to them? But it also depends on your particular business. And if you're selling a product that people between like 18 and 35 buy more than any other demographic, then yeah, Instagram would probably get you more sales. But again, there are things you do on Facebook that just wouldn't make sense on Instagram. Like they do have like you can create events.
Yeah.
They do have like, I think like you get away with like, people still do stuff like post a quote.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is an interesting quote. I posted on Facebook. But there is what I did notice was the grid thing on Facebook. So when you do, they call it a carousel post. I don't know if you know that it's called that. A carousel post on Instagram is just when you post more than one image at once, and so you can scroll through those images.
Yeah.
They call it carousel. So when you post a carousel post on Instagram, you see only the first one first. Now, if that's in your news feed, the next time you go through your newsfeed, you're going to see the second one automatically instead of the first one because it knows you've already seen it.
Yeah.
But on Facebook, what it does with those is kind of a cool thing. The big one's big, like the first one's big, and then the other three, like if there's more, they'll be like next to it. And
it is a cool looking layout.
it kind of looks cool. So you could possibly, when doing carousel posts on Instagram, think about how is that going to look on Facebook, or once it's posted, go into the Facebook one and edit the Facebook one solely. You could add more pictures later. You could add more pictures onto it and make it look cooler. But yeah, for me, I feel like Facebook needs to like change.
It does.
Yeah. It's like, it's a weird place.
It's very weird.
It used to be so cool. And then I think I think the main thing is everyone just got sick of hearing all their friends and family's opinions about stuff.
Because it became a place where it turned into like diaries and journals, and then it just came into these like political standpoints, like especially with like everything that was going on. Like there was one of the worst places you could possibly be was Facebook. It was just people fighting, and then it's like then you get into the comments and they're fighting. I used to enjoy going on there, and it was cool, and you could connect with people, and it was kind of like this. It felt like it was kind of a hang, and now it doesn't feel like it was a hang anymore. It just feels like a giant empty room that you got to yell across, and it's just it definitely needs to change. I don't know what they're going to do to change it, but it's like there is still useful tools. I still dump
Marketplace?
Marketplace is awesome.
Marketplace is great.
Yeah, that is I got so much stuff at the studio for that, so it's like that became a really cool thing. And I don't know.
There's if you can find a good Facebook groups can be cool. But yeah, then it's like you got to do your work. I mean, for me, so actually, I think like I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't even know anymore. So they used to make it harder on Facebook to not follow people. So on Instagram you have to like literally not follow them. Now you're not connected at all.
Yeah.
On Facebook you can still be friends but not follow them. So that means you just don't see their stuff. Well, it used to be you have to like go through these series of like windows and clicks to unfollow a person, and you'd have to do it for each person. So it would be like very labor intensive if you had like hundreds and hundreds of friends, let alone thousands. But then they had an update. So there was like a settings screen where you could go in and you would just see everyone, and next to them would be an unfollow button. So I went through and I was like, oh my God, this is great. Unfollow. Because I don't want to go on and see people's opinions about stuff.
No.
Just because I'm friends with you. So I like left my sister, stuff like that, in case, like, who knows, like they might post something crazy. Like I have to see. I don't want to not know,
Yeah.
But that was a good thing. But like, yeah, it takes
the
a lot.
Suggested stuff.
But who
that
wants
drives
to go
me nuts.
through all the effort of having to like make a Facebook be good enough for you? But I will say, so since we're talking about this, not that it has anything to do with anything, one of my favorite Facebook groups of all time, and you should follow this. It's called Bathrooms with Threatening Auras. It's so good. The stuff that people post, dude, it's just like hundreds of comments on every post, and it's just like
that's really the only
stuff.
It's like the only thing really left that kind of keeps me there is stuff like that. Like I have a couple groups that I follow, and like the people have added me in, and they just end up being like something that I kind of like pay attention to and see posts throughout the day. But like, it's like that whole thing has changed so much. Where do you see social media being in like the next 5 years? Like, what do you think is going to take over? How do you think things are going to be?
I have no clue. I don't think about it at all. In regards to things like that, I've always tried to like sort of like stay middle of the road, sort of like classic vibe with stuff in life, because trends go up and down and blah blah blah, but you don't want to follow them too much, like I'm sure you could make a lot of money off of this or that or this or that, but then you see those people like a couple years later like, oh, that was a bad idea. So I like to try to just keep it classic and timeless in a way, like what would work no matter what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I just know that whatever happens, like I'll be ready for it and I'll deal with it when it comes. But some things are, and which is like I see stuff and I'm always like weary of being like, oh, everybody's jumping on the trend of doing this and doing that. Like, you know how memes are where it's like, I remember, memes like have evolved so much over
Oh
time,
my God, yeah.
and now it's like literally like meme life is like a meme shelf life is like 2 or 3 days at the most now. And it's like way more memes of that nature. So like something happens with like remember the Bernie Sanders
Yeah.
with the mittens thing? It went from like no one knew about it to like like millions and millions of people were posting it, and then all of a sudden like no one cared anymore. It's just like it's gone. So I don't know that there's like a great use in jumping on that necessarily. Like it's funny and fun in the moment, but like in the long run, like does it matter? But yeah, like real changes in social media. I mean, I don't know. If I knew that kind of stuff, I would be probably way more rich than I am. I'd be in like tech and whatever, but
All right, well then let me break it down a little bit, a little bit
unless
differently.
I'm not understanding.
No. What do you want out of starting this business, and like where do you see this, and like do you see it like turning into a thing where this is your career and this is what the only thing that you
for
do?
me?
Yeah, like in general for you, like where would you want your business to be with your social media? It's a separate question. It was two in one.
Okay, for me, I would like to. I like right now I bartend. I don't want to bartend. I mean, I'm getting pretty old for that, and I've already actually like sort of like, I mean, you mentioned this before, sort of like a little bit of a gamble. I've taken less shifts so that I have my schedule open a little bit more to do stuff and talk to people, meet with businesses, maybe focus a little bit more on my social media stuff. And so hopefully for me, I won't have to bartend anymore, or maybe just do it for fun. Like maybe like if someone's like hiring a bartender for a private event.
It's a solid skill to have. It's one of the things that a lot, I moved and immediately I just picked up bartending. It's a great skill to have. Same with cooking. You can go anywhere and do it.
I've learned a lot from it, and made so many connections too. But yeah, I would basically want to have a few accounts, and if I was able to push it beyond that, to hire someone to help me, which I already know the person I would want to hire actually. So I'll shout out my friend Olivia, because she's not trying to, I don't think she's trying to be like a social media person or anything, but she takes like the best photographs of anyone I've ever seen. So I often like go to her for advice actually. Like I'll send her a photo and be like, there's something wrong with this. Like, can you fix it or something? And she does. But yeah, so it would be really cool to start having employees and like, getting to that point where like maybe I even have like a brick and mortar place with a bunch of computers and we're all just doing social media stuff for companies, and yeah, we have it all like beautiful mind, sort of everything's mapped out. But yeah, I would love to just focus only on social media, but I mean, obviously, especially now, I have to like kind of like pay my dues.
Yeah. I mean, but that's, like I said, the beginning of it, and it's kind of the road you're paving, and the fact that you can already picture it and you want it to be brick and mortar, like, those are like goals, and that's a path, and it's very important to have those. And if you just stay on track, and like I said, you don't stop doing it, it's a very achievable thing, just because I don't think social media is going anywhere. I think too many businesses are connected to it. It's the only reason my business exists. Is technically social media. I mean, I'm putting podcasts out and videos out, but it's like, if YouTube's not here, where are people seeing that? A website that I can't promote, but I need a website. Well, what's a website? It's on the internet. What's the internet? Social media. Like it's what everything's turning into. I mean, if you look at the way cable is now as well, like, you know what I mean? Like my parents just got rid of it. They're in their 70s. Like if people in their 70s are getting rid of cable, like, you know what I mean?
I don't want to like rat on myself, but I was just talking to myself about this the other day. The idea of, I think I meet people who are old. I hate to say this, they're older, because I'm older to a lot of people, but some of the older people that don't get the whole social media thing, they're not on it. They don't want to do it. They don't want any part of it. And they're like, and their excuse though is just like, oh, I'm too old for all that. But I meet people the same age as them that like know it all and do it all. So it's not really because of that. It's like there's something about them, that they're not interested. But like I look back and I'm like, okay, remember when I was a kid? Like TV commercials were like way more influential and cool than they are now.
Yeah.
Like magazines were way more influential and cool than they are nowadays. And like, everything evolved. And I think like sometimes it's hard to let go of the fact that the stuff that was popular when you were younger, it's just not relevant anymore.
No. It was hard for my parents to do it. My parents, and what's funny is it came down to money. Because I'm like, yo, you're spending like fucking almost $400 a month. Like cable's extremely expensive. I'm like, you can get this, and this, and you can be paying like $115, and you can be saving $300 a month. But you have to figure out how to use this. Like they're still adapting, and they'll call me and be like, I don't know what's going on with Hulu. Like perfect example. My dad was like, every time I walk away from the TV, this screensaver comes up, and then when I get back into Hulu, it's not where I paused it. And I was like, turn the screensaver off. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
He's like, how do I do that? And I'm like, you go into settings. But that's normal to me because I grew up in an era where computers became computers. I grew up in the Packard Bell. I grew up in the Gateway. I was a computer kid. We played computer video games. We had to go into settings. We had to do all that. They didn't do any of that shit. You know what I mean? So like, the fact that like they're adapting, like, and the whole reason I went to video on this is because I started watching YouTube. Like I started watching YouTube instead of TV because I didn't want to pay cable, especially when I got my first apartment. I'm like, I got cable, and then I'm like, dude, this is just, do you watch this much TV? Because this is now, it's not like you're at your parents' house where somebody else is paying for everything. I'm like, this is over $100. It's like, and then you add a cell phone bill in, and I'm like, what the fuck is this now?
It's almost like something to have to like seem normal when people come over.
Yeah. So like when I started watching YouTube, and then I was like, oh, I'm like, you're watching fucking because even now, like if I don't want to get into something like a series, I'll be like, I'll just pull up YouTube. The most I'm going to be in there is a couple minutes. So then like I started watching podcasts, and then I was like, fuck man, like this is where this is going. This is what TV is going to be. And then what's crazy is there's more ads on YouTube now than actual television. Yeah. Like, it's fucking nuts. Like sometimes if you're watching something and like you get the wrong timing, like it's just boom, commercial. Yeah. You could skip them, which is just I feel like it's just like a mind trickery where like you just put up with it. Like, oh, well, I can skip it. Like, yeah, but you're still fucking it's interrupting it, and it sucks still. Yeah. But like,
And then they do like multiple in a row. You like look and you're like, and I'm just like, it's one of two ads.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
But it's like but they want you to pay without commercials, and then it's like now you're paying cable again, and it's I don't know. I feel like
YouTube's great though.
I love YouTube. It allows me to do all this.
There's so much. I looked at, oh, actually my phone just told me, I didn't ask for this, but it was like, oh, we have a report of your screen time activity for this week or month or whatever. And I looked at it, and it was like YouTube was like, like so far ahead of every other app, but it makes sense. You're watching videos, but so what we were just talking about reminded me of something I wanted to say earlier, which was when we were talking about like the whole organic posting and like waiting, not scheduling posts and posting in like a certain time frame. I had thought about, I don't know if you ever watched Mad Men.
Yeah, I watched the whole series.
It's one of my favorite series on Netflix. I've actually watched it like 6 times.
It's really good.
It actually a lot of the themes and ideas and the things they do play a lot into like the field that I'm in with the social media, actually, because it's like advertising and copywriting, even stuff like that. There was a funny scene in the show where, it wasn't funny. I shouldn't say that. There's an interesting scene where, the agency was about to get a car, and they really wanted a car. They wanted to have a car and then they didn't get it. But the thing that they, showed them to try to win them over was this ad of, oh no. Oh, it wasn't a car. It was I think it was a hairspray. That's what it was. So they had people in a car and the hairspray. It was like 4 people in a convertible, and the one girl had the hairspray in her hair, and her hair wasn't getting messed up, but the other girl's was. And in the show, they would have gotten the account but didn't. And then like a week later, Kennedy got assassinated in a convertible with the people, and it like was similar. And the girl made the comment like, well, it's a good thing we didn't get that account, because we would have had to pull all the ads and we would have wasted all this money. But it was something that I thought about, where it's like, it's so weird, like all the things you don't know how the landscape of society is going to change at any moment.
No.
And what makes sense today could possibly be insanely wrong in a week from now, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just something that I thought about with the organic, like sort of like posting in the moment thing, where that's an extreme example, but
it's I mean, it's a good example because you don't know what's going to come down the pipe. You don't know, there's things that happen, and then the entire marketing department needs to strip everything down and get something fixed for the Super Bowl like 2 days ahead of time. And it's like, now you're not even making money because you had to completely change everything you're doing.
yeah, like something that could happen. Like, what if you made a commercial for the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
And 2 days before it happened, you had it all ready, and 2 days before it happened, some insane like social thing happened, and you're like, oh, this looks bad.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, it's crazy how like companies have to change because of what's going on with social media, and like it's really different now that like, you could air something before and then like people would kind of talk about it in their homes and then like it would just kind of pass over, where now it's like everybody's connected, where like if somebody fucks up, and even if, let's just say it times wrong, where something happens and then the next day, like for instance with what was it when they did there was a massive school shooting and then they pulled Foster the People's Pumped Up Kicks, like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was just a popular song at the time that had a lyric, and then this thing occurred, and then they pulled that off of radio airtime. I believe it's back on now, but for like the rest of that summer, which was like your home run song that's going to make you the most amount of money ever, is pulled because of an event that happened when, I don't know what that song's about, but I'm guessing it had nothing to do with.
No, well, someone told me that the song was about Columbine.
Was it?
I don't know that that's true. I just heard
Yeah, I don't know. I like throwing lies out on this podcast.
I have no clue.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, then it was like, damn, like I remember hearing that song, and like that summer, that song played constantly, and then it's just off.
Yeah.
You're not getting radio play. So like, all right, cool. Well, like now I'm not making any more money because of something that happened, and then it's just like, all right, well, where's the line drawn in that? And you don't have control over that anymore.
Yeah, that's crazy. So,
I don't know, man. I'm gonna wrap up. We could go on for days.
Yeah, I know.
And like you could, like, this is an open door, man. We always talk like this when you come down. Anytime you need to promote anything, anytime you want to push a business, if you want to come on with a business, you're more than welcome to. I think it's awesome you're trying to do this. I think that you should. You know what you're doing with it, and you definitely are moving stuff around at the beginning of a business, and it's important to do that. And I think you're already structuring it, and you have vision to do it. And I wish you the best on doing it. And like I said, man, if you ever want to come down here and bullshit like this, it is an open door to promote what you're doing. I'm going to give you a chance to kind of give everybody your social media and give any way that they can get a hold of you to hire you or just to talk to you more about what you do.
Well, I recently created the social media Instagram, which is Tomatillo Social, Tomatillo_social. That's a nickname that people have for me. And my Instagram itself is Thomas Lawrence O'Donnell. Either way, on the Tomatillo Social, I have all my info, so you could get it there. It's relatively new, so I'm really just posting stuff I've done in the past. That's pretty much it. I mean,
who are you working with that they can check out accounts? Because I know Mindleaf.
So yeah, Mindleaf is the main one that I'm doing now. I sometimes post to Black and Blue because I work there, but I'm not doing the social media, so it's not really a gauge. I used to do Two Rivers, so it's kind of hard to like look at that because like it's like, well, where did it start and begin? Which is why under my it's kind of like part of the reason I created the Tomatillo Social one is because I could post the stuff from the places I've worked at that I did post for them, so you can see like which ones were mine. You can kind of tell when you like, because I have a certain style. You can kind of tell when it's like I was taking the picture, but most of all that stuff is on my new Instagram that I just created for that.
Cool. I'll have all that stuff in the links and whatnot.
Yeah.
And, I'll have that and everything, and you'll have all of his social media stuff in the actual bio of this. If you're a first-time listener, first-time watcher, first-time anything, you can find all of what I do on neveragainstudio.com. The YouTube's on there. The Facebook's on there. Everything you need to know about me and everything I'm doing is on neveragainstudio.com. We're also doing Nazo Ammo. If you're looking for ammo, you can head over to nazoammo.com. I have a ton of 9mm. We have pickups. We have delivery. If you have any questions on that at all, do not be afraid to hit me up on it. And thank you again for coming on, man. It's always super interesting topic to talk about. And like I said, don't be afraid to come back on. I'll book you again. Good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.